Chapter 8. Theo didn't sleep much either. He dozed off from time to time, but could not stop thinking about Woody behind bars. At midnight, he suddenly thought of something else that bothered him. He went online, checked the local newspaper, and saw one paragraph story about the armed robbery. An 18-year-old named Garth Tucker had been arrested for robbing Carl's Grocery, a convenience store on the western edge of town. 2 minors were also involved, but their names were withheld, as was custom. Tucker was free on bond. So the stupid kid who pulled the gun was resting comfortably at home with his family, while Woody and Tony were still locked up. What was fair about that? As he stood and mumbled to himself, Theo found Garth's Facebook page and saw a staged photo of him holding his wrists together with what appeared to be handcuffs. Behind the photo, Garth wrote, "Jill ain't so bad, but the food's lousy. It's all big misunderstanding and will soon be cleared up, according to my lawyer." Theo turned off his laptop and tried to close his eyes. He eventually drifted off, woke up again, went to the bathroom, spoke to Judge under his bed, and tried to go back to sleep. At sunrise, he showered and dressed quickly and hustled downstairs. He was at the kitchen table pretending to review his homework when his father appeared. Every morning, Mr. Boone rose early, made the coffee, and left to have breakfast with his friends at a downtown diner. When he saw Theo, he said, "Well, good morning." Theo did not respond. He was angry with his parents, and they had argued over last night's dinner. As always, they had busy plans for the morning, and neither wanted to get involved with Woody's case. Theo did not understand why they, or at least one of them, could not go to youth court and insist that Woody and Tony be released immediately. They had tried to explain that they were not criminal lawyers and did not work in youth court, but Theo didn't buy it. If Theo wasn't speaking, then neither was Mr. Boone. He made the coffee, fetched the newspaper out of the driveway, found his briefcase, which he had brought home every night but rarely touched, poured a cup, and left without a word. Theo fumed and watched the clock. There were clocks in every room of in their home, clear proof that they were busy people with organized lives. Normally, Mrs. Boone skipped breakfast and instead sipped coffee in the den while flipping through the newspaper, but she was running late. Theo could hear her moving about upstairs. He waited. Judge began whimpering because he wanted breakfast, so Theo fixed him a bowl of cereal with milk. Same meal Theo had every morning. At 8, Miss Boone appeared, dressed for work. She wore a pretty maroon dress, black heels, and jewelry. One look and Theo knew she was ready for court. She always dressed fashionably, but there were times when she looked a bit sharper. She poured a cup of coffee and sat across the table from Theo. She said, "I'll meet you in youth court at 9. You call Daisy Lambert, and I'll call Miss Gladwell and tell her what's going on." Theo exhaled, smiled, and said, "Thanks, Mom." He hurriedly grabbed the bowls and put them in the sink. He rubbed Judge's head and said goodbye, and sprinted from the kitchen with his backpack. The small courtroom was filled with people, and Judge Pendergrass assumed the bench and said good morning. For the second straight morning, he looked exhausted with dark circles around his eyes and fatigue all over his face. He even yawned as he glanced around the courtroom. An important hearing was scheduled for 9 o'clock, and Theo was worried that the Lambert boys would be ignored until later. However, his mother had made a phone call and chatted with the judge. He peered over his reading glasses and said, "Miss Boone, I believe you have a matter before the court." Marcella Boone stood, and everybody looked at her. Theo had seen her in court on several occasions, though she would not allow him to sit through her divorce trials. The testimony was often too rough for a 13-year-old. He admired her greatly and knew she could handle herself in front of any judge. "Yes, Your Honor, thank you. And I would like to enter an appearance as an attorney of record for the sole purpose of getting bail set for Tony and Woody Lambert." "So you're their lawyer?" "Sort of. I know the family, and I'm just pinch hitting until a public defender's office can take over." "Where's the public defender?" Good question. I'm told that his office has yet to talk to the Lambert boys. I assume the PD is very busy, as always. Well, I was informed by Miss Lambert yesterday that she could not afford a lawyer. I'm here pro bono, Judge, as a friend of the family, and just for the purposes of getting bail set. We're trying to get the boys out of jail. The PD will take over from there. Judge Pendergrass yawned again and shrugged, as if he didn't really approve of her involvement, but no judge in the state would tell Marcella Boone that she didn't belong in a courtroom. He said, "Very well. I'll note your appearance. Are the boys here?" "No, sir. They're still in jail. Their presence is not necessary. It's just a bail hearing, Your Honor." Judge Pendergrass shuffled some papers and read something. "Each is charged with armed robbery. What type of bail are you requesting?" "Personal ID, Your Honor. The Lamberts have lived here for many years, and there's no reason to believe that Woody and Tony will not appear in court when they are supposed to. They pose no risk of flight or disappearance. They're both students and good boys. This is all misunderstanding anyway. Nothing can be gained by forcing Miss Lambert to spend money she doesn't have." His Honor frowned and said, "I see here that Tony Lambert is on probation from an earlier violation this year. This could complicate matters." "Let's deal with it later, Your Honor. The goal right now is to get them out so they can meet with their attorney and find a solution." Judge Pendergrass was shaking his head. "Their co-defendant, Mr. Garth Tucker, posted bail at $50,000. This is a serious crime, Miss Boone. He's an adult and apparently his family has the money. I'm not concerned with Mr. Tucker. My clients are minors and deserve to be released from jail. There's no good reason for keeping them locked up." Theo was sitting next to Daisy Lambert in the front row. He managed to keep a frown on his face, but wanted to say, "Go get him, Mom." Judge Pendergrass said, "But for a serious charge like this, Miss Boone, I cannot simply release them on their personal IDs. I've never done that. And until we know the facts of this case, I cannot assume that these boys are as innocent as you think they are." Without yielding an inch, Miss Boone said, "I assure you they'll show up in court when they're supposed to." "That sounds good, but I've heard it before. And since you will not be their lawyer after today, I'm not sure how you can guarantee anything." "The family has little resources, Your Honor. Any type of bail will be a hardship. Indeed, any bail will simply keep the boys in jail. They are innocent until proven guilty." "I realize that. Does the family own a home or any other real estate?" Miss Boone exhaled in frustration and said rather sternly, "No, Your Honor. The family rents their home. Miss Lambert works 2 jobs. One is a part-time hairstylist, the other is a waitress in a restaurant. Her husband, the boy's stepfather, works in construction, and right now he's on a job 2 hours away. His involvement with the boys is limited. The family is barely getting by, and any amount of bail is nothing but a hardship. For armed robbery, I cannot set a bail below $10,000 for each." "That's $20,000, Your Honor." "I can do the math. Bail bondsmen typically charge 10% for the bond. That's $2,000 just to get them out. That's unfair, Your Honor." Judge Pendergrass glared at her, obviously irritated. "Nothing I do is unfair, Miss Boone. I realize you do not work in criminal law, and I assure you that $10,000 bail for armed robbery is not unfair and is definitely on the low side. These boys got themselves in trouble. Don't blame me for it." For a tense moment, the lawyer and the judge stared at each other, but it was obvious who was in charge. Miss Boone finally smiled and said, "So be it, Your Honor. Thank you for your time." "You are welcome. Now I have a scheduled hearing, and I need to move on. You are excused. In other words, would you kindly leave my courtroom at this time?" Theo followed his mother and Daisy Lambert into the hallway, where they huddled in a corner. Daisy was wiping tears, and Miss Boone was trying to control her frustration. Theo had almost $400 in his savings account, and he was already thinking of ways to get more. "What about your husband?" Miss Boone asked. "Which one? The current one?" Daisy shook her head. "He won't help. We talked last night and had a big fight. He says he's not coming home for a while and will not help the boys. They've never been close." "What about their father?" He's around, but we don't see much of him. I'll ask him. He might pitch in something, but I doubt it. He's not working much these days. You do that, and we'll talk later. I need to get to the office, and you, Theo, need to get to school. Daisy wiped her face and said, Thanks, Marcella. You'll never know how much I appreciate this. I'm not sure I helped the situation, Daisy. Thanks for being here, and thank you, Theo. Theo said, I can't believe Woody is sitting in jail. Halfway to school, and pedaling as slowly as possible, Theo remembered that he was officially excused from class. Neither Mr. Mount nor Miss Gladwell nor anyone else at school would know how long things took in court, so he had an idea. He turned around and sprinted to the jail, where he found his pal, Captain Rick Pruitt. Carrying his backpack, he explained that he needed to meet with Woody and discuss their homework. He implied that he had been sent by their teacher to help his friend keep current with their lessons. Pruitt was skeptical and suggested that he should call the school and check out the story. Theo said that he would be fine, but he doubted Miss Gladwell would answer the phone because he was tied up in an assembly. To Theo's horror, Pruitt picked up the phone and called the school. He asked to speak to Miss Gladwell, then said, Good morning. This is Captain Pruitt at the police department. Your student Theodore Boone is in my office, and he says he needs to visit with Woody Lambert to do some homework. Was this authorized by anyone at the school? Theo thought about bolting, but tried to remain calm. Pruitt listened and listened, then smiled. He said thanks, and hung up. He pointed at Theo and said, If you're not in school in 10 minutes, I'm calling your mother. Theo saluted, said yes, sir, and ran from the office. And that's the end of chapter 8.